To God be the glory, only the mistakes were mine. Denzel Washington said this in an interview. Two sentences, two directions, and it contains everything. Most men have it exactly backwards. They claim the wins, they reflect the losses, they build an identity around what they achieved and quietly bury what they got wrong. And they wonder why. With every success, something still feels hollow. This is episode 41 of Built Not Felt by the Rice Board. And today we are going deep into the statement, what it actually demands of a man, why it's so hard to live, and what changes when you do. So let's get into it. Let's start with what his quote is asking you to invert. The natural human instinct is to do the opposite. Take credit for the good, distribute blame for the bad. It's ego prevention, it's self protection. And it feels rational in the moment. You worked hard, you earned it. Why give that away? And when things go wrong, someone or something is always partially responsible. So why carry it all yourself? But here's what that posture actually produces: a man who can't be corrected, a man who can't grow, a man who is permanently stuck at the ceiling of his own ego. Denzel's statement inverts all of that. Give the glory upward, take the responsibility inward. That's the posture. That's not humiliation. It's the most honest accounting of how anything actually gets built. Think about everything that had to align for anything good in your life to happen: the timing, the people who showed up, the doors that opened when they had no reason to, the moments you should have failed but didn't. You didn't engineer all of that. And pretending you did is not strength, it's delusion. But the mistakes, those are clean. Those are yours. Nobody handed you those. The shortcuts you took, the conversations you avoided, the decisions you made from fear or pride or impatience, those belong to you. Own them without flinching. We need to talk why pride is so seductive. Because it doesn't feel like pride when you're in it. It feels like self respect. It feels like not letting people diminish what you built. It feels like protecting your identity. The man who deflects blame tells himself he's just being realistic. There were external factors, circumstances outside his control. The man who claims all the credit tells himself he's just being confident. But Proverbs 16 verse 18 doesn't negotiate on this. Pride goes before destruction, a haughty spirit before a fall. But destruction isn't always dramatic. Sometimes it's just slow stagnation. A man who can't hear correction stops improving. A man who won't own his failures keeps repeating them. He will he builds a ceiling out of his own pride and calls it a roof. Proverbs 15 verse 33. Humility comes before honor, not after. That sequence is deliberate. You don't achieve and then become humble. Become humble and then you're positioned for something that lasts. I want to be precise here because this can be misunderstood. Giving God the glory is not the same as denying your work. You put in the hours, you made the sacrifices, you showed up when you didn't want to. None of that disappears. What changes is your understanding of where the capacity to do all that comes from. The discipline you used, who gave you that? The mind that's found the solution, who built that? The moment the right person appeared at the right time, who arranged that? When you trace it back honestly, you reach a point where your own efforts run out of explanation. That's where God is. First Peter 5 verses 5 and 6 puts it plainly. God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Humble yourself under God's mighty hand, that he may lift you up in due time. That phrase, in due time, matters. God doesn't lift up a man who is busy lifting himself. Posture of humility is also the posture of receiving. You can't hold both at once. A closed fist to claim credit and an open hand to receive blessing. Second Corinthians 12 verse 9. God's power is made perfect in weakness. Paul understood this. He stopped fighting his weakness and started letting God's strength move through it. That is not passive. That is the most advanced spiritual posture man can hold. Now the second half. Only the mistakes for mine. This is where most men break. Because accountability at surface level is easy. Saying I made a mistake costs nothing when there is no real consequence. The test is deeper than that. It's whether you own it when it's costly. Whether owning it means losing something. When owning it means the story you've been telling yourself, the story you've been telling about yourself has to change. Proverbs 28, verse 13. Whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. Concealment is the enemy of progress, not the mistake itself. The concealment. A man who buries his failure intact carries them forward. The same pattern resurfaces. The same walls appear because nothing was actually resolved. It was just hidden. Accountability is not the same as shame. That distinction matters enormously. Shame says, I am the mistake. Accountability says, I made the mistake. One collapses your identity, other gives you a specific thing to address and move past. One leaves you paralyzed, the other leaves you with with somewhere to go. Own the mistake, understand it, don't carry it beyond what's useful. That's the motion, confession, not condemnation. Denzel Washington has been one of the most decorated actors alive for 4 decades. Awards, legacy, cultural weight, the body of work is undeniable. And what he talks about in interviews is not the craft, not the Oscars. He talks about faith. He talks about God opening doors. He talks about being positioned, not just prepared. He says that quote, to God be the glory, only the mistakes for mine. And it's not performance. It's the actual framework he uses to make sense of his life. Here's what I find significant about that. Denzel Washington is not a man who needed the narrative of humility to stay relevant. He could have leaned into ego and still had a career. The humility is not strategic; it's convictional. That's the difference between a man who quotes scripture and a man who builds his life on it. One uses it when it's convenient, other returns to it when it costs something. Philippians 2 verses 3 and 4. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourself. That verse is describing an active posture, not passive, not weak. It takes more strength to subordinate your ego than to feed it. Every man who has ever tried knows them. There's a version of faith that becomes an escape from responsibility. God's got it as a reason not to do the work. That's not faith. That's avoidance dressed in spiritual language. James already addressed that in chapter 2. Faith without works is dead, not dormant, not pending, dead. And there's opposite error, full responsibility, no God, the self made man, everything earned, nothing received. That produces a different kind of brittleness because when things fall apart, and they eventually do, there's no foundation underneath. Just the weight of a narrative that says you built everything yourself, which means you also destroyed everything yourself. Denzel's statement holds both without collapsing either. God gets the glory, full acknowledgement of grace, provision, and sovereignty. I own the mistakes, full accountability, no excuses, no spiritual bypass. Both clauses are load bearing. You can't remove one without the whole thing failing. James 4, verse 6. God gives more grace. This is why scripture says, God opposes the proud but shows favor to the humble. Grace is not handed to the man who already thinks he doesn't need it. It's extended to the man who understands exactly how much he does. This is not a posture you adopt once. It's a discipline you return to daily. Because pride regenerates. It comes back quietly. After every win, after every moment where things went your way, the discipline is the return, recognizing it, naming it, and reorienting. When something goes well, praise it. Don't just receive the result, follow it back, find the grace in it, acknowledge it specifically, not as a formula, but as an honest recognition of what you didn't engineer. When something goes wrong, resist the first instinct. The first instinct is almost always to locate the external cause. Sit with it long enough to find your part, not to destroy yourself over it, to extract what's useful and move forward cleaner. And then there's the deeper practice, using your success as an instrument rather than an identity. If God gave you the capacity, opportunity, the result, then the result is not yours to hold. It's yours to steward. That shift changes everything about how you carry what you've built. Two sentences, two directions, and an entire framework for how a man should carry himself. To God be the glory. That's not a performance for the people. That's a private reckoning with where your capacity actually comes from. It's the thing you say in the quiet after the win, not the stage after the speech. Only the mistakes were mine. That's also private. That's the inventory you take when no one is watching. What did I get wrong? What did I avoid? Where did I choose the easier path over the right one? Own it without theater. Learn from it without ceremony and move forward. The man who can hold both of those simultaneously, gratitude upward, accountability inward, is a man who can actually be built, not inflated by his wins, not destroyed by his losses. Steady, grounded, growing. This is built, not felt by the rice code. I'll see you in the next episode.